Karen Rash, and today I will be doing a sales pitch for Dennis Litke's and Samantha Gerbel's The Big Picture. I definitely want to start off with saying that this book was by far one of the best books I have read in my whole teaching credential career. I was very excited that I chose this book specifically because I teach middle school students and I found a lot of content to relate to the specific age group that I am currently teaching. I would like to start off this sales pitch with asking you, what is this a picture of? I deliberately zoomed in on this specific part of a bigger picture, and I want you to try to think how these will end up in the final product. Okay, so now that we see a bigger picture of the zoomed in picture from before, how does this picture inform you of the final product? So if you thought this picture is definitely a picture of ingredients for a cake, you were correct. And I decided to start off this sales pitch with this specific picture because sometimes we focus in on the small things or on a specific ingredient, and we tend to overlook the bigger picture, when in reality, that bigger picture is what is going to get us to our final product. In this case, as teachers, we want to look at curriculum and the overall academic experience of a student. I decided to ask one of my eighth graders what big picture meant to him. And he was really shy, so he didn't want a picture of him in my presentation, but he wrote down on an index card what he thought big picture was. He said, "I think big picture means having goals for my future, seeing the outcome of the goals I set and how that affects my future." He is a very bright kid, and I am so glad that he was able to think about big picture and technically connect to what I will be talking about in this presentation. So, The Big Picture by Dennis Litke has 10 chapters, even though he does number one of them 8.5. And every single chapter is packed with information that definitely helps any teacher, K through 12, look at a different perspective in school curriculum and just school and academics overall. I decided to focus on three specific chapters that really spoke out to me. That is the third chapter, Atmosphere and School Culture, the sixth chapter, Real Work and the Real World, and the ninth chapter, Make It Happen. Atmosphere and School Culture. I want to go back and show you pictures once again. I am a very visual learner, and I'm hoping that this sales pitch will intrigue you with some of these pictures that I found. Which teacher looks more welcoming and why? You have the teacher who is standing up in the middle of the group addressing the students while they're working on their laptops. And then you have another teacher who is writing on the board and students seem to just be taking notes. Of course, we each learn in a different way, and perhaps some of us do like the idea of having a teacher lecture us. However, in Litke's The Big Picture, he talks about creating this sort of relationship with our students. And I'm going to address how we can do that in just a little bit. There's a quote that says, "Enforced quiet not only keeps kids from being themselves and keeps teachers from finding out who the kids are, it also kills learning. Communication is the lifeblood of education." So this is one of the sound bites that really got to me. This definitely talks about creating those relationships with our students, and that is actually answered in the next question. How can we increase student voice and positive student-teacher relationships on campus? I would like to let you know that these three ideas are just three of many ideas that Lipke presented in this book. He goes into detail about having an advisory system. I have an advisory period at the middle school that I teach in. This is actually a brand new thing that we started this year, and it is a 20-minute class period where we focus on establishing positive relationships with our students. These are smaller size classes so that we can focus on that one-on-one individual interaction that is so important in establishing a successful and welcoming atmosphere at school. Another thing that he talks about is having impromptu conversations, which kind of derives from that advisory system program. We are really big on doing restorative justice practices at the middle school that I work at. So, as part of that, teachers should have those impromptu conversations with effective statements. Instead of scolding or yelling at a student or reprimanding, perhaps we can try establishing those impromptu conversations and have side conversations with our students, get to know them. Who are they? What do they like? Things of that nature. And with that, trust and respect will automatically come. Students can create social norms in classrooms to increase student voice and responsibilities. I taught AVID last year, and it was a great experience seeing students come up with classroom norms as a whole group. They had their voice heard. They chose the consequences that would happen if one of them broke those social contract norms. They all signed it at the end, and they felt proud knowing that they contributed to these norms that we all have to abide by in our classrooms. These are just some examples of what we can do to increase student voice and positive student relationships. And Littke does a great job at outlining different ideas that he thinks can be successful to his experience as well. The next chapter is real work in the real world. Now, I want to ask you, do the students look engaged in this project? In your opinion, does this project seem to connect to the real world? Now, I deliberately chose a picture where you really could not see if the project seemed to connect to the real world. You can speculate and maybe even judge based upon what you see on the desk or on the table. But sometimes we assign projects to students that we think may relate to the real world, and in some aspects they do, but really we're missing some factor that completes the idea of that connection between what students are doing and what students would do in the real world. Sometimes looks can be deceiving, and yes, this group definitely looks entertained and definitely looks like they're engaged, but how much of it is connected to the real world? Littke goes into that in this chapter. The quote for this chapter is, students are sitting there because they have to, but they're not involved in what's going on, and they're not learning because nobody's reaching their hearts. Let them follow their hearts to something that is real and has meaning for them. This was the soundbite definitely for this chapter. This chapter is all about focusing on how we can improve those student projects and connect them to real situations. So, how can we make classroom projects real and transferable to students? Once again, he gives us all these great resources and ideas and even anecdotes from his own personal teaching experience. But I decided to focus on these three because these are the ones that I could relate to right now as a middle school teacher. The 3 R's, which we have studied before in previous resources in this course, say that we should establish positive relationships, and learning must be relevant and rigorous. We should always remember that the work that our students are doing should be connected to things that they will encounter in the real world. Now, a next thing that he talks about is having internships. So this is definitely more for the upper grades. If you teach elementary, this might be a little more difficult, but internships in the community could be integrated in the school curriculum. So we could take that next level step in making our classes, our content relatable to what students will be doing in the work field. And the last part is mentors. And I chose mentors because I feel like this could connect to any classroom K through 12. In mentors, Littke talks about outside community members helping guide individualized student goals and passion. So even in kindergarten or in first grade, if we can have people that work in specific areas in which students are learning concepts in, and have these people come in and mentor students or teach a lesson or simply explain how the content that the students are learning in class relates to the work field, then we are adding that real world connection. And Littke does an amazing job at giving information as to how internships and mentors have really helped students make that connection and establish that relationship with the community. The community is so important. We have to teach our students that they have to have these collaboration skills, communication skills, because the work field requires them to have this. So this chapter by far is one of the best chapters because he goes into depth in explaining, how we can have students do real work that will be found in the real world. The last chapter that I've decided to focus on is titled Make It Happen. And the guiding question for this chapter is, what changes would you make to your phone to make it more effective? I want you to go ahead and look at your phone. We all have some complaints of our phone. Maybe it's too slow, maybe it freezes, whatever the issue may be. I want you to think about your phone and what changes would you make to make it more effective? And keep that in mind because change is something that a lot of people are not happy with and they're very skeptical about it. It says, a great school is like a successful business in that it keeps looking at itself, questioning its operations and making adjustments accordingly. When the kids change, when technology changes, when priorities change, when new research findings suggest a better way. We have to look at ourselves in education as business people. We have to keep looking at ways to make the material relatable to these students. I graduated high school a little bit more than 10 years ago. And to some people, that's not a long time. To others, that might be a long time. I feel like it's a long time. But even within those 10 years, so much has changed from when I was a student as to the students that I have now. And it is amazing to think where we will be in 10 more years. Why does Apple, Samsung come out with new phones every year? Because they look at their previous models and they say, great, we had this year. What can we do to improve it? What do our customers need? What is that supply and demand? And if we don't look at education the same way, then we're going to find ourselves stuck in a rut. And we definitely need to move on with our students and their needs. The leading question that I decided to do for this chapter is, how can you foster the ability of the students, colleagues, and yourself to think outside the box? We need to just make it happen. And as you can see, that is the third point. But before that, Littke goes on to explain that we need to have the following concepts in mind. These are the friends of change: concentration, commitment, conversation, collaboration, caring, and conviviality. And all of those things go along with change. We need to concentrate on what we need to do. We need to commit to that idea. We need to have conversations, collaborate, so on and so forth. And a lot of us tend to have excuses. Maybe your ideas seem too far-fetched. Maybe you don't have a strong idea that you want to start with. But starting somewhere, having one idea, having a conversation to trigger that idea is where we need to go. We need to make our ideas happen without fear of the unknown. If we commit, then it will definitely help our students commit. We need to start the conversation with others, and that includes colleagues, students, community members, administrators, different people to help us then explore these new things that we need to start doing. Curriculum is so much more than just reading, writing, coming up with a lesson plan. We need to start making those real world connections, not those projects that we think will get the job done, but truly those assignments that make students think about their future college and career opportunities. I want to end with this quote that really stuck with me, and it came up at the beginning of the book. It says, if you put good people in an environment that allows them to continue learning and that reinforces their risk-taking, their passion, and their commitment, then you can make good people great. And I would love for us as teachers to take that and even change it to, you can make good content, good curriculum, good lessons. Great. If we put that much more, if we look at the big picture, if we focus on the little things and how those little things will really end up looking for the students, then I know that we can be successful in our academic careers. We need to focus on where our students are heading. Throughout this course, we have looked at backwards design. If we integrate that idea into this book, we can see that if we want our students to reach a certain level or a certain place, then we need to see how we can help them get there. Of course, this is the reference, this is the book. You can definitely buy it on Amazon. Of course, any place that sells textbooks or books of that sort, you can find. But on Amazon, it is only $8.75. It is out of stock temporarily at this moment. But if you go back and check, I'm sure you will find that it will be back in stock soon. I hope that this sales pitch helped convince you, whether you're in kindergarten, whether you're in 12th grade, whether you're a community member or an administrator, a teacher, a student. Really, looking at the big picture helps all of us determine where we want to go and how we will get there. And Lipke does a beautiful job explaining how we can do that in the educational world. I hope you guys take this and go buy the book. You will not regret it. It is by far the best $10 I have invested. I marked up this book and I will definitely use it throughout my career as well. Thank you.